Who's the most formidable debate opponent that you have had in your career that you can think of now on this question of God's existence?
I don't think there are any. Not that I'm formidable myself, but I don't think that there are any very good arguments.
No point in a debate where you're sat there getting ready to get up and give your 10-minute rebuttal while they're speaking, writing your notes and thinking, oh gosh, what am I going to say to that? That's a fair point.
I don't think so. I mean, I don't want to sound arrogant. It's not that I've got great points. It's just that I don't think there are any good points to be made.
And maybe it's something about the debate format as well. You know, everybody's so prepared that
Yes.
you're rarely caught off guard.
Yes. I mean, the sort of professional debaters on behalf of religion, people like William Craig, I've no time for him. I mean, he's got this sort of loud, rather pompous voice, and he says that's a premise 1, deduction 2, and things like that, and the audience, I suppose, is supposed to be impressed.
I've had William Lane Craig twice on my podcast, and I always had a good experience with him. Having said that, I didn't debate him. I don't know what that would be like. It's something you're not interested in doing, debating William Lane Craig? Or having a conversation perhaps with William Lane Craig?
I have done. I've vowed not to. I feel such contempt for him because of his, I don't know whether you've seen what he says about the Israelites slaughtering the Midianites, and I mean, instead of saying what any decent theologian would say, well, it never happened, and this is just an Old Testament story. He says, well, the Midianites had it coming because they were so sinful. And then if you worry about the Midianite children who had their brains beaten out of them, that's okay because they went straight to heaven. And that finished him off as far as I was concerned. Now, for me, I actually wrote a piece in the Guardian saying, well, I will never have anything to do with him.
I can see why you might sort of look at something like that and say, that's an evil thing to think. That's an evil thing to say. I don't want to debate this person. A few moments ago, you told me that the idea of the New Testament in general about being born in sin and needing salvation is an evil idea.
Yes.
And yet, that's an idea that many of the opponents that you have spoken to will have believed. They believe evil things too. So why particularly with William Lane Craig do you have?
It's a fair point. I think the thing is that the Christian theologians who take this seriously are honestly well-meaning. I mean, they believe in the God of love. They believe in Jesus as the Son of God of love, and so on. I think the sheer they would never have defended the slaughter of the Midianites and the Jebusites and things in the book of Joshua as somehow justified because the Midianites were sinful. I think it's an order of magnitude worse there. Perhaps you would disagree with that.
Maybe. I mean, I think there's a sense in which a Christian who believes in the historicity of the Old Testament, I mean, the Midianites might be, I'm sometimes told it's complicated by the fact that it's Moses who instructs the slaughter of the Midianites, but it seems clear to me that this is sanctioned by God. I think that a Christian who believes in the historicity of the Old Testament just has to believe that whatever happened there was somehow okay with God, was somehow moral. Now, I agree that to me is a criticism I make all the time. How could this be moral? But I also say, how could it be moral that God allows children to get cancer? How could it be moral that
yes.
God, and I suppose the thing that I would say is that if you pressed a Christian, well, if there's a good God, why do children get cancer? They just have to say something like, there must be some reason for this. There must be some explanation.
Yes, I suppose that if they really do if they really do believe the literal word of the Bible, but then that brings us back to fundamentalist creationists. I mean,
even just in terms of why God would allow evil at all. What I'm imagining, in other words, is suppose we had this other Christian philosopher debater, and somebody had said to them, well, why do children get cancer if there's a good God? And they said, look, if I believe in a good God, I have to believe that the children who die of cancer are going to heaven. I have to believe that there's some reason for the suffering that they're undergoing.
Yes.
Now, you could say, this person said that, kids who have cancer, they should be grateful because they're going straight to heaven. And there's some reason to give children cancer. That's despicable. I want nothing to do with this person. I'll never debate them. However, I would suppose that basically everybody that you've debated on the topic of Christianity would say something like that about cancer in children.
Would.
And so I wonder why with William Lane Craig it's a particular problem.
You make a good point. I suppose none of these sophisticated theologians take the literal word of the Old Testament seriously. I mean, they don't believe in Adam and Eve, for example. They don't believe in therefore why would you believe that the story of the Midianites is history? Why not just sort of say, well, this is some kind of tribal myth, and all sorts of tribes have these horrible.
Well, I can keep up this God's advocate, if you like. I would say, in other words, I would answer that question with a Christian hat on by saying that the Bible is a collection of books rather than a book, and that book contains different genres. And that the genre of Genesis is something like poetry.
Exactly.
The genre of Numbers seems much more to be, at least intended to be, history, in a way that the genre of Paul is letters, it's epistles. Whether or not you think he actually even existed, I think Paul existed, just to be clear. But it doesn't really matter. It's still clear that if you think that it's true, the kind of thing that Paul's doing is writing letters. The kind of thing that Acts is doing is essentially, biography or history, is attempting to do that. It seems to me that where Numbers is very obviously trying to just recount historical events, Genesis seems a lot more allegorical to me. And so it doesn't seem inconsistent for me to say, well, of course I don't believe in Adam and Eve. I don't believe in the 7-day creation. But I do believe that there was a real slaughter of the Midianites by Moses and his armies.
Well, yes. And then, I don't think you should then go ahead to justify it, but by saying that they were sinful. I mean, I should have thought that the right and proper thing for a Christian to say is the slaughter of the Midianites is no more factual history than the story of Jupiter or Apollo, Thor with his hammer and things. These are tribal myths, which we can study as mythology. But why go out of your way to make it sound much more evil than it really is, by saying, well, the Midianites were sinful and their children were going to heaven anyway? It's somehow, I just find it more appalling. Perhaps I'm wrong, but I find it sort of appalling that you take it so seriously, that you actually, well, you take the belief in the historicity of it so seriously that you even defend it, rather than just say, as any decent bishop would say, well, it's never happened.
I think that, as particularly at the height of the new atheism and religion debates that were happening in the sort of late 2000s, I think a lot of people were disappointed that the forerunner of the atheist side, Richard Dawkins, and arguably the forerunner of the Christian side, William Lane Craig, never came together to have that debate. Because even if you do think that what he believes there is particularly and specifically evil, I suppose everything you've just said to me, people would probably just like to see you say that to William Lane Craig.
I wrote an article in The Guardian saying it, and I did in fact have a debate with him in Mexico, I forget when.
With the boxing ring?
Yeah.
Yes.
I just no desire to I don't respect him. I find his manner pompous, and I just don't want to be in the same room as him, really. Well,
in the interest of diplomacy, I will offer no further comment, except that that's certainly not my experience with the man. But
okay,
I imagine that we've had very different interactions with him in the past. Let's put it that way. If you liked that clip, then you'll love the full conversation, which you can watch right now by clicking just here. Go on.